final draft of the Constitution was prepared and sent to the states on September 28th, 1787. It was sent to the states to be ratified, and two factions emerged to argue and debate whether or not to accept it. The pro-Constitution side was known as the Federalists, and the side that was opposed to the Constitution as it was known as the Anti-Federalists. The Federalists were led by people like James Madison and Alexander Hamilton, people that had been part of the Constitution Convention and supported its acceptance. The Anti-Federalists had people like Patrick Henry, James Monroe, Richard Henry Lee. They were a diverse group. They had different ideas. Some wanted to reject the Constitution altogether, some wanted to change it, and some wanted to scrap it and start all over. The biggest unifying factor among the Anti-Federalists was a lack of a Bill of Rights, a collection of individual protections. So we can see that that's one of the things that emerges out of the ratification debate is the Bill of Rights that we have today. Before we get to that, though, the Federalists are also known for what's called the Federalist Papers. Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay wrote a series of 87 different essays between 1787 and 1788 in support of the Constitution, and it supported this idea of a strong national government, the principles and assumptions of the Constitution. One of the more famous parts of the Federalists is number 10, where James Madison argues that the bigger a republic, the more secure it is, rather than the conventional wisdom that a republic, having elected officials speak for you, required a small number of people. Madison said no, having a large republic would allow for more voices to be heard, and the extreme ends would cancel each other out. And then having the separation of powers and checks and balances would ensure that there weren't going to be any extremes that really take over. And in this way, you could prevent government from becoming a tyranny of the majority and taking away minority rights, preventing a factional tyranny. The small states accepted first: Delaware, New Jersey, Georgia. They ratified the Constitution by 1788. New Hampshire became the ninth and final state needed to be approved, but they were still trying to convince New York and Virginia, that the largest and third largest states, Virginia the largest, New York the third largest, to accept, which is what led to the Bill of Rights being accepted so that they would get on board. The Bill of Rights in particular is very interesting. James Madison wrote them up. He actually proposed 12. 10 of them were accepted. You probably know the majority of the Bill of Rights. If not, it's pretty easy to look it up. The first is free speech, free press, free religion, freedom of assembly, freedom of petition. We have the freedom to own firearms, refusal to house soldiers, unreasonable search and seizure, refusal to testify against yourself, the right to a speedy trial, the right to have an attorney, the right to an impartial jury, freedom from cruel and unusual punishment, and the 10th Amendment, which reserved powers not given to the federal government to the states and the people. That one's been fairly controversial. What I find interesting about the Bill of Rights, and what others have as well, is that it wasn't designed to protect citizens from state violations of the Constitution. That doesn't come until later with the 14th Amendment, where it applies more broadly. The First Amendment says the government shall not take away the right to free speech. It limits the Constitution. Limits the constitutional government, limits Congress. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which come at the end of this class in the Reconstruction Amendments, say that the government shall do things, which provides more power for the government. So it's really an interesting transition from the founding generation to the post-Civil War generation.